Hello, everyone. Welcome, future lawyers, to another TestMax 1L workshop. This is the third of these workshops designed to help you with the skills that you will need to make your 1L year a little smoother. Our first workshop was Jennifer, who's here today, about synthesizing a rule. Our second one was Nate. I did part of it and Nate did part of it about reading and briefing cases. And today, Jennifer will present outlining. So that's where we are in this series. I'm Celeste Pagano-Bowles, and I am the content director at BarMax. Many of you got to know TestMax through LSAT Max, the program that helped you maximize your LSAT score. And we also want to help you pass the bar. But we realize that we have a talented team of instructors who are also very equipped to help you make that 1L first year of law school experience somewhat smoother and less painful. So that's what we're here for today. I have mentioned in the past that the TestMax YouTube page will be showing these videos. And I found out that there was a delay in the editing, and we have overcome that hurdle. So these should be posted, all three of them, by the middle of next week, if you want to share them with colleagues or anything else. I'm going to take a moment to share my iPad screen here so that I can talk about what else we're offering other than these workshops for you as 1L students. This is the 1L app. And as you see, it has lectures and outlines in most of your first year subjects. So if you are doing personal jurisdiction and civil procedure and say, I am really not getting this, it doesn't make sense, well, then come and listen to Arthur Miller explain it. And maybe hearing it from a different professor will help it click for you. Or you say, well, I want to review the defenses to crimes, then there will be a lecture about that as well. So you can look not only at the whole subject, but at even part of it. You say, what is this, third-party rights and obligations part of contracts? If your professor even gets to it, it's on the bar, so we have it here. But these are lectures and outlines that are available for you to use. Jen will talk about kind of the difference between those and writing your own outline. We also have law and flashcards on your first year subjects. We have some multiple choice practice, some practice essays, which are very useful, and case notes, legal briefs. If you want to check that you're understanding a case, there are a great number of cases in here with briefs available for you to read if you're stuck. So this is 1L. If you haven't downloaded it yet, go ahead and download the app. The app itself is free, and you will get 1 week of free access. And then you can decide whether you want to continue to access it. It would be $24.95 a month after that. And then finally, we also offer, this is from last time, but I just wanted to show you and remind you that we are available as tutors, Jen and Nate and other tutors are available. We have 3 of us who have been law professors in the past, and we have bar exam tutors who are prepared on these subjects. So if you want a little more one-on-one help, our tutoring prices, as shown here, are lower for law students right now than they are for the bar exam. So that is something you want to keep in mind. We have some chat and Q&A. If you think your question needs to be addressed for the whole group, you can throw it in Q&A. But Katie and I will be monitoring chat to answer questions about TestMax, questions about the material, questions about anything that come up along the way. You can throw them in chat. And those are my only announcements, is to let you know these are our offerings to make your 1L year more smooth, and how we're handling chat and questions today. So with that, I would like to introduce, I need to stop sharing this screen. I'd like to introduce Jennifer. Jennifer Carr has, 20 years experience probably now, or close to, teaching bar exam, teaching 1L students, teaching academic support at law schools, and then teaching some of the doctrinal subjects to those students as they were going through their 1L year. And she also helped prepare law students and now BarMax students for the bar exam. So she is very, very equipped to help you through this process. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic to Jennifer.
Yeah. Hey. So it's been almost 20 years. So so in my previous life, I was, as Celeste mentioned, working at law schools, actually teaching doctrinal subjects like criminal law, like torts, like remedies. And a big part of my job was helping first-year students kind of do law school. And definitely when I went to law school as a first-year student, I felt like there was a group of students who kind of got how to do law school. And then there was a group of us that, we were smart and we were working hard, but we didn't have whatever the secret was that these other kids had. And it felt like we were at a little bit of a disadvantage. So one of the things that I really want to do, now, when I was working for law schools and now with BarMax, is to kind of share that secret, right? What is it that the kids who know how to do law school, what is it they have? What is it they know? And can I share that with everyone so that we can all be successful in law school? And then, if you watched the synthesis, webinar at all, you're going to know that I'm also really big on pointing out that a lot of what we do in law school is not some special rarefied skill that you've never done before. We're applying it in a new way to new material, right? You've never done analysis in quite this way before, but you've synthesized material before, you've organized material before. So, some of this stuff can feel very intimidating, or it can feel very unique. But I want to remind you that it is not, in fact, I don't want you to be intimidated by it, because it's not something that is so special that you've never done anything like it before. It is different in law school, but it's not, a completely foreign skill. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about it, right? Let me go to my PowerPoint here. Okay. So welcome to us and to BarMax. Like I said, a little bit about me, a little bit about the program. Celeste has shown you what's available. Today, we are going to talk about outlining, and sometimes I'll call it the course specific summary, right? And sometimes students will say, why bother, right? And, you just saw our product, which includes an outline. Jen, why am I going to create my own outline when y'all will give me an outline? What's the point of that? And you know what? Our outlines are great. You probably could use our outlines and be fine, but you're going to be missing out on a skill that you are supposed to acquire during law school. I'll talk about how to use our outlines effectively and a way that they can augment what you're doing in law school. But I would encourage you to, kind of struggle through the process of creating your own outlines. Those are important skills that allow you to do well, not just in law school, but later on when you're practicing law, right? This is something that you're going to need when you are, writing briefs, doing appeals. There is no, purchasable outline on, how to do an adoption or how to do a death penalty case. So you really do have to begin to acquire this skill now. And like I said, you've been doing this for a long time. You can do it. And then there's also sort of a pedagogical reason, which is that we as human beings understand, retain, and convey back information that we've sorted into recognizable patterns better than random information. This is called chunking. And if you just think about your phone number, right? So your phone number is 10 numbers and it's chunked into 3, 3, 4. We do that because chunking it in that way makes it easier to remember. If we can give information to it, like my area code is 702 because when I first got my phone, I lived in Vegas, and I can attach meaning to that first chunk of information. It sticks with us. So the purpose of the outline is to chunk all of this stuff that you've got in your, I got my class notes and I have my case brief and I have my, stuff that I got out of the BarMax outline. And I got my, brief that my friend gave me. And also I found this thing on the internet. And what do I do with it? And the point of the outline is to sort it into some kind of reasonable chunk that you can attach meaning to, and then that you're going to be able to remember that. You're going to be able to give it back to your professor in a way that makes sense. Okay. So I mentioned you've been doing this for a long time. So we're going to start with one of my favorite exercises. It's going to feel a little silly. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I think it's important because I want you to know that you've been doing this for a while. So this is my purse sorting exercise. It's a collection of random stuff you might find in my purse at any given time. We've got some chapstick, protein bar, cat treats, because one of my hobbies is that I foster kittens. One of my sons has asthma. We've got his albuterol inhaler in there, crayons. My kids are getting too old for crayons, but sometimes my best friend brings her daughter over and then suddenly my kids are not too old for crayons. I love colorful pens. So here's your job. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes and I want you to sort this stuff. I want you to imagine that you've got I've got a big old purse, one of those big mom bags, right? And I want you to imagine that you have some smaller bags, right? And I need to be able to, in a meeting or wherever, grab a small bag and have like things in that small bag so that I can grab the hand lotion at once. So you're going to have to make some decisions about what goes together. And then you're going to have to attach some meaning to that. So, hey, the Band-Aids go with the tissues because reason. And then I'm going to ask you to share the groups that you've sorted these materials into and why. So I have 12:17 on my clock. So I'm going to give you guys until 12:20. So go ahead and take a moment and start sorting. Tell me what's going to go where.
Should they each write an answer in chat?
I think that they should sort of do it individually, like just on their own selves, and then I will ask them to share.
Got it.
Or ask a volunteer to share. Okay, guys, so I have 12:20. So is there a volunteer that would be willing to tell us what their groups are and what is in each group? Don't make me call on you guys. I will. All right, we got somebody in the chat. Let's see. Kayla, tell me about your groups and what you put in each group.
Okay, do you want me to name off like the number of groups I have?
Sure, that'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe I have 4. So the first group would be I paired the chapstick with the hand cream and then the mascara because they are like more for maintaining yourself. You know, if your lips are dry, you put on chapstick. If your hands are dry, you put on hand cream, and then your mascara, obviously, to touch up your makeup. I put the pocket tissues with the Advil, inhaler, and then the Band-Aids because those are kind of like medical, stuff. Because if you have a stuffy nose, you could blow your nose. And then I put the crayons, the sticky notes, and then the pens together because that's more of a drawing creative type thing. I put the Luna bar with the Temptations cat treats, although I'm not sure how I feel about putting cat treats with like a protein bar.
With kind of like the idea that like they're things to eat, whether they're things to eat for people or cats.
Yeah.
I love it. And then Juan was saying crayons and Band-Aids. And I'm guessing, Juan, you're thinking things to keep the kids busy more than like Kayla's sorting of Band-Aids into medical supplies. Okay. Yep. I think that's totally valid. And then we've got lotion and lipstick, and mascara, sort of, I'm guessing kind of a like keeping sort of beauty products kind of thing. Then we've got the medicine, Advil and inhaler. And Juan says, I'm going to create two categories of one, treat and Lunabar, versus Kayla's decision to combine those into the things to eat category. And then Trina says same categories. And Trina, I'm guessing same categories as Juan? As Kayla. Okay, interesting. Anybody have crossovers with Juan? So Lisa decided to have some categories of one as well. One for cat food, one for Luna bars. Ooh, Celeste says she did it differently as well. Celeste, please tell us what you did.
Okay, so I figure all the kids stuff can go together. And that would be, what did I have in kids stuff? Oh no, I just had the crayons I had the crayons, Band-Aids, and the inhaler, because that's stuff you're going to have to grab for your kids. And honestly, I might throw the cat treats in there too, because that's stuff that's not for you. You don't grab that bag if you're in a meeting, right? With me, or one of our other colleagues or whatever. But
you might be surprised as I'm like grabbing it like,
Exactly. Right. Well, we're hoping that you avoid that. So that takes care of all the things that are not for you. That's 4 things. And then like your own, I honestly only would need 3 categories, because I'd put the colorful pens and the sticky notes together, because that's writing. And everything else is your own personal care. And that might be kind of a messy bag. It might be too hard to remember all that. So maybe I should have subdivided, but it was chapstick, Luna, tissue, Advil, hand cream, and mascara, which is probably what my purse looks like. So yeah, maybe having fewer categories would be okay.
I love it. I love it. Does anybody have any other ways of dividing that we haven't thought of? Okay, so a couple of things I want you guys to take away from this. So the first thing is, there's not a right or a wrong. So the fact that we have, like, I've heard basically 4 different ways of setting this up, totally okay. So your friend who has the 200-page outline and you have a 20-page outline, it's totally okay. Totally fine. I actually love the fact that at the end of that, Celeste said, hey, my purse kind of looks like this anyway. That tells me that she has tested this method and it works for her. That's one of the things I'm going to tell you about your outline. You need to try it out. You need to make sure it works. And so you may decide, hey, this setup doesn't work for me, right? Maybe we put the Luna bars and the Temptation cat treats together, and then Jen actually accidentally does grab the cat treats and try to eat them one time. And she realizes, oh, that's terrible. I'm not doing that again. Right. Or maybe we do have everything together and Jen realizes, oh, that doesn't work. Several of you said, hey, I had a couple of categories of one. That will sometimes happen. Sometimes professors will give you a case that's just kind of a standalone case that's out there so that you can understand. Sometimes judges do wonky things. And you're looking at this case going, where the heck does this fit? It's the cat treats. It doesn't fit anywhere. It just lives there. That's okay. That's okay, right? The point is to look at it and kind of say, like, does it fit somewhere? It's also okay to put things into different places, right? Sometimes cases are there to go into different places. So it would be okay to say that crayons go with, say, the pens and the paper, or that the crayons also go with the Band-Aids, because the crayons keep the kids busy, but they also are for writing. Or that the Band-Aids go with the medicine, but they also go with the crayons because they keep the kids busy, right? And you may have some cases like that. You may have some cases that are used to show 2 different ideas. don't feel like they have to go in only one spot. You can put them in 2 different places, okay? It's totally okay to do that. Everybody okay with that? All right, let's get to what you came here for. Let's actually start talking about the law, right? You're like, yeah, Jen, you've convinced me. I've been doing this my whole life. That's great and everything. But can we talk about the law? So I do want to talk about one more attempt to convince you to do this. So I am sure you have heard about this thing called IRAC, right? Issue, rule, application, conclusion, or sometimes people will say analysis, conclusion, same thing. When you have done your outline can help you get the issue and the rule before you even walk into the exam. And that means you can walk in with basically the first part of your exam done. Okay. And then you just have to, adapt it based on the facts of any given exam. So it's really going to give you a leg up over folks who haven't necessarily done it. So you want to make sure that you take the time to do this if you can. All right. So end of the day. Whoops. Why is it doing this? There we go. Because I put in fancy animation. So I will say, you want to think about having it, not making, or making it, not having it. And you want to think about making it professor specific. Okay. So the outlines that we have are going to be really good places to get overarching rules. They're going to be really good guides to the course. And what a lot of folks will do is that they're going to save looking at those outlines until after they've done their reading of the course. I'm going to suggest you actually reverse that. What can be kind of frustrating about law school is we kind of drop you in a canyon and we say, figure your way out, make a map as you go. What a commercial outline does, right? We're a commercial outline. We've made an outline for you, and it's like, hey, you can, look at it and it's going to help you, is to say, these are the things you should find in this canyon as you go. And so you can, as you read, say to yourself, did I find those things? Did I see that this case was here for this purpose? And check your understanding. You still need to, make your own map / outline as you go, right? Even if you look at how, Celeste and Jen have organized their purses, or, my middle son, well, actually both of my kids are really into scouting. And so they do a lot of backpacking trips. And so before you do your backpacking trip, you have to bring your backpack to the Scoutmaster, and he checks it to make sure that we've packed appropriately. Look, even if you've had, you've looked at what Scoutmaster Tom or Scoutmaster Steve packs in their backpack, your backpack might be a little bit different, right? And if you're going on a trip with, Tom wants you to have a waterproof sack, even if you're not going anywhere near water. Okay, I'm going to put that waterproof sack in no matter what. But if I was, if I'm with Scoutmaster Steve, I don't necessarily have to do that. Same thing here. We can definitely give you the outline. We can give you the map. We can show you where you should be going. We can help you check your understanding, but you still have to personalize it to your individual professor, so that you can add in his or her tweaks, what she likes or dislikes. We talked about way back in the beginning, the idea of synthesizing the cases. The idea that you're going to combine the cases to come up with one rule that's going to govern similar situations. And I'm going to use some criminal law examples. Most folks should be taking criminal law. So that's what I'm using. if you're not using criminal law, just bear with me. I think it will still make sense even if you're not taking criminal law. So, when you read a couple of cases in crim about, the concept of knowingly, and, you may also have read the MPC, the Model Penal Code, like a statute or about knowingly, you will hopefully have come up with a definition of knowingly. And you will hopefully have decided that, knowingly means that it's practically certain that the defendant's conduct will cause a particular outcome. And you may have read a later case where it said that willful blindness as to facts that would demonstrate knowledge is also knowingly. If your friend asks you to go pick up his car from Mexico for some weird reason and says, don't look in the back, and then lo and behold, it has 150 pounds of marijuana, that might be enough to demonstrate knowingly. And so, you want to sort of distill all that into you could think of it as a definition or just one rule. You're going to put all of those cases together into a rule. And if you're looking at that and you're going, but how? In a couple of days, Celeste is going to have that synthesis workshop up on YouTube, and I think that will help. And I also will say, practice. I hate to say it, but practice will help. It is one of those things, the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. Okay. You want to, this I think will also help. So I want you to just like, I took all of the stuff that was in my purse and I dumped it out so we could look at it. I want you to ask the following questions when you're reviewing your cases. So I want you to get your class notes. I want you to get your textbook. I want you to get your syllabus, and I want you to get the case briefs that you have. And I want you to look at the cases. And I want you to ask yourself, why is this case here? Why did the case book editor put this case in the case book? Why did my professor want me to read it? And hint, usually the first case in a section is there to introduce you to the rule, right? So, the first case is there to explain that knowingly is required. And then the second case is there to say, and hey, willful blindness is, another type of knowingly, something like that. So the very simple, the most simple question, the most simple reason is that the case is there to give a rule. Knowingly is an element of mental, or is a type of mental state, it's required. Later cases, like the case afterwards, after that first case, often gives a sort of an exception to the rule, or it expands the rule, or maybe it contracts the rule. Maybe it says, this is the rule, but in some cases, the rule isn't going to apply. Or maybe it says this was the rule, but we're going to overrule it. It's going to kind of give the rule additional framework. Sometimes there will be a case in there that's really just there so that you can hear the court's, reason for having the rule. So for those of you who are in crim and you read Dudley versus Stevens, and it's all about, why they have to punish the guys who were starving and had to kill their shipmate and, commit an act of cannibalism. That case is there so that you can start thinking about, why do we punish people? Those of you who are in property and you read the case about the fox, that case is there so that you can think about the policies that underlie, that support property rules. other thing that you can think about is what are the facts that the court focused on in applying the rule? And we always talk about that, right? We're like, oh, what are the key facts? Well, look, the facts that are key are the ones that are just super practically, guys. If you look around where the holding is, the facts that are important to the court are the ones they're talking about right there. And if you wanted to reframe it, a lot of times you can say something like the court held whatever they held because of these facts. And whatever the facts are that follow the because, those are going to be the key facts. When you're creating your outline, what you don't want is what I would sometimes call a briefo line. So I don't want just case brief, case brief, case brief, case brief, right? You've got to situate those little case summaries within the rule. What they are examples of how the rule was demonstrated in particular cases. Okay. Then you're going to look at your lecture notes. One of the things many professors will do is they will actually kind of lay out how they want you to approach a question, right? So they may say, remember, every crime has 4 things: an act, a mental state, causation, and attendant circumstances. Usually causation is pretty clear, but I always want you to think about it. Or she may say, when you're analyzing a torts question, start by considering whether there's any intentional torts, then look to see if there's any defenses to those intentional torts, right? Does she give you some kind of a framework around this is how she thinks about this problem? So not just how does she, explain the law, but how does she solve that problem? And sometimes the way that she asks questions can help with that, right? Does she say, and then what's the potential counter argument here? That tells you she cares about counter arguments. Make sure you're including that in your outline. Does she tell you, what policy did the court hold here? That tells you the policy matters to her. Does she say, and did you agree with the majority or the dissent here? That tells you she may want you to include the dissent in your outline, right? So think about how the professor is approaching these cases and make sure you're including her approaches in your outline, right? If your professor releases old exams with model answers, you may also want to take a look at those. So let's say that the model answer to the torts question includes, step 1, intentional torts, step 2, defenses to intentional torts, step 3, negligence, step 4, defenses to negligence, step 5, a check for products liability. It may be that you want to try to set your outline up in that manner. So you've got your class notes, you've boiled them down the way we said, you've got your briefs, you've boiled them down the way we said. What are you going to do next? I would say brainstorm just a list of key terms, right? Like just what are all the stuff you've talked about so far? And so in a crim class, this might be all the things you've talked about so far, right? Like you might have talked about theories of punishment. You might have talked about how there's the MPC in common law. And at this point, literally just kind of brainstorm. Do not censor yourself. Don't try to order it. Again, this is like an additional step in the dumping the purse out stage. We're not sorting our purse yet. Now you're going to start sorting. So now I want you to start looking at that stuff and thinking, okay, how could it fit together? Okay, so yeah, we talked about, the mens rea and the attendant circumstances. And oh yeah, if I go back to my, where is it? lecture notes, my professor said those were the various elements of a crime. So, let me go put it in that order here. Maybe I will, throw in I'll remember that from my brief, we had that discussion of, there we go. The idea of willful blindness as sort of a type of knowingly. So I'm just going to stick it under knowingly. So all you're doing at this point is just kind of trying to figure out, how do these words that you've listed kind of fit together? What are they? One thing that can help is to kind of ask yourself this question, right? Is this a big picture? Is this an element? Is this the rule? Is it some, element of the rule? Is it some modification, expansion, narrowing, exception? Is it an exception to the exception? Is it a modification of the exception? Kind of ask yourself those questions. And then these are the steps you're going to follow. So you've got all of your stuff. It's all listed here. Maybe you've taken a first stab at organizing it a little bit. And then here's your steps. So if you walk away today and you're like, I can't remember exactly what Jen said, she talks kind of fast. There was something about purses. What do I do? This is what I want you to remember, okay? You're going to draft your skeleton outline. You're going to insert your synthesized rules and subrules. Then you're going to put in your case facts and your hypotheticals from class. Then you're going to put in any reasoning or rationale or policies, okay? This is the key moments here that I want you to focus on. So that skeleton outline, where are you going to get that from? A couple of places. I want you to look at your syllabus, because on your syllabus, your professor probably says like, hey, here's where we're going to talk about, mental states. And you can be like, oh, okay, this section is mental states, just like we said, this section is medicine. And then you could look at the headings in your book, which maybe say, chapter 1, mental states. And then the next heading says, purposefully. And then you have a heading that says knowingly, and you can stick those in. I want you to think about, how they're going to fit in organizationally, right? You don't necessarily have to adhere to your professor's syllabus. You don't necessarily have to adhere to your book's table of contents. And the way that your professor teaches the class may not be how you choose to use the information on an exam. So when I teach criminal law, I usually start with punishment and theories of punishment, because it kind of helps folks get into this idea of, this is why criminal law exists. This is what we do with it. But it would be super hard to start with that on an exam. Like, hey, I haven't yet established that the defendant committed any crime, but I'm going to start talking with his punishment. So you may want to actually put that at the end. Sometimes, for those of you who are doing civil procedure, professors will start with the jurisdictional piece. Sometimes they'll start with the complaint and then the answer. So you can move those around a little bit and see what works best for you. How are you going to know what works best for you? You're going to test it against exam answers. What exam answers, you say? Well, you can use your professor's old exams if he or she has any. And also, we have some practice exams that you can use, okay? And doesn't have to be the same person to person. Just like Celeste had a bigger section that was just like stuff Jen needs versus stuff the kids need. stuff she can grab in a meeting and shove at them and like get out of my face and trying to think, versus like stuff she might actually need to look at and use, versus Kayla's organization of like medicine and foods and, different organization is okay. So in my example, this is what I'm so sorry, you guys. I went to move my thingy and accidentally muted myself. So, you might have the elements of the crime, and then this would be from my syllabus, and then this would be from the headings in my book. And then you could use these from from what I would call the big rules. I'm sorry, guys, hang on one second. So you've got this, if I think about like, oh, what did I learn about mental states? I learned that it's also called the mens rea, which is the guilty mind. I learned that there's like this specific intent and general intent. I learned purposefully, knowingly, willful blindness. I learned that that's what those are. Then I want you to think about the cases that you read. And I want you to really focus on the holdings or the rules that you got out of those cases. So, we read Utes, which held that willfully at common law approximately means the same thing as knowingly under the model penal code. And that knowledge to a practical certainty that, conduct will result in a particular outcome is knowingly. And then we read Hall, which is about, recklessness is a conscious disregard of substantial and unjustifiable risk. And then the court went on to define substantial and unjustifiable risk in that case. So I grabbed those out of the cases. Those were the holdings or the rules that I grabbed out of there. But what about the facts? Now I'm going to throw the facts in. And these were the facts from that particular case, Utes. This is facts that are from a treatise. And then this might be one from class. So you can see how you're going to integrate your class notes into your outline. So now, once you've done that, you might insert the rationale or policy, right? So we have this idea of knowingly as a doctrine because you've got the rationale that, just because you didn't intend it doesn't mean you're off the hook. So and imagine that we're kind of zeroing in, right? So we start with elements of a crime, and then we zeroed in on mens rea. And then under mens rea, we added in, but before actus reus, we added in intention or knowledge of wrongdoing. And then we added in specific intent. And then we added in purposefully. And then we added in knowingly and willful blindness. And then we added in Utes and Hall. And then we added in all of this stuff about Utes. And then we added in this last piece of Utes. And then we would go back and do the same thing for Hall. And then we would go back and do the same thing for negligently. And we would do the same thing for purposefully, right? And then we would go back and do the same thing for deterrence and rehabilitation and retribution and isolation. The last step, like we said, is to use your outline to take your exam. And the first couple of times that you do this, I don't want you to time yourself. Have your outline open, have your exam open, and see if that outline can guide you through the taking of the exam. And I don't want you to be too strict with your time limits, right? Because the purpose of this is just to see if the outline is helpful in the way that you take the exam. Because remember, ideally what we've got here is the beginning part of your IRAC, right? The beginning part of your IRAC. It's actually showing you, here's the issue. The issue is that willfully being blind can equal the same thing as knowingly. And, here's the rule. And here are some facts that look similar. And I'm able to discuss that cogently because it's well integrated into my outline. And then the way that you're going to evaluate, look at just can you answer it, right? Like, or are there rules missing? If there are, that's a great time to go to one of those commercial outlines and say like, hey, do I need to add something, right? That's why we put those outlines in there. Is it organized effectively? If it's not, that's another good time to take a look at our outlines and say, maybe I want to organize it again. Is it thorough enough, right? Is it, if you look at your professor's model answer and she's got a bunch of policy and rationale and reasoning in there, this part, and you don't, maybe you need to add some more. Did it make sense to you? Maybe you actually need to cut it down. Maybe you need less in there. And can you follow it and memorize it? I see we've got something in the chat, and this is what I have for you. So my next comment was just going to be, please let me know if you have questions that are specific. I'm happy to try to answer them, or any other thoughts about outlining. Let me see what's in the chat here too. So Celeste says, what should they be using for practice if they don't have sample exams from their prof? So obviously gold standard is going to be a sample exam from your professor, because that's one that they've written. Second best is going to be sample exams from other professors at your institution. Oftentimes, folks, those are going to be kept at the school library. Sometimes the registrar may have them. Third best, honestly, come get some practice exams from us. You can just Google practice exams, but you're not going to necessarily, and sometimes those are fine, but you're not going to necessarily know the quality and all that. The thing about practice exams, there's only so many ways to test this stuff, right? And so, once you've kind of written a practice exam or two, you're going to know kind of what they look like. So while it's best to use your professor's exams, just finding a practice exam still has value.
Jen, you're muted again. You said just doing a practice exam has value.
Yeah, just doing a practice exam has value. So I would love for everybody to be able to take their professor's old practice exams, but sometimes, you've got a new professor who hasn't taught this class before. They don't have a practice exam, or you have a professor who reuses questions and they say, I can't release my questions, or whatever it might be. So, yeah. In that case, come use our practice exams. We have them. They're there for a reason. If you can't do that, you can Google, tort first year practice question and see what comes up, and give those a shot as well. I feel like folks have to have other questions.
When should they start making their outlines?
Great question. So I would say you want to start when you finished a section, right? So let me go back here. Whoops, now I ended it. Okay, so it's really hard to do this until you've finished a section. So if you are, if you haven't finished this mens rea piece, organizing it is going to be practically impossible. But once you've done that, you can begin to outline. And I would say, a lot of times what ends up happening is that this gets put off until the last minute, and that is definitely not ideal. What you really want would be that you can spend, your reading week, doing your practice exams rather than doing your outline, right? So ideally, you're going to start as soon as you finished a section in your course. So, hey, I just finished found property in property. It's time for me to outline that section. Or I just finished intentional torts in torts. It's time for me to finish that section. Or I just finished, intent in crim. It's time for me to outline that section. And then see if you can find a practice exam on intentional torts, or finding abandoned property in property, or intent in crim, and try doing those questions.
Okay. All right.
So I guess other questions that I often get are, how long should it be? And I'm going to say again, needs to be totally individual. So when I was in law school, I studied with a couple of really good friends. One of my friends made outlines that were over 100 pages long. He did quite well. My outlines were about 20 pages long. I also did well. I also heard that I also hear from time to time, like, what if I'm not good at the Roman numeral 1, A, when do I put and then is it a like Arabic 1, I, like what goes next? So formatting does not matter, y'all. Don't worry too much about that. It's totally okay to just have your own little format. Does not have to be perfect. What we're looking for here is just a way for you to remember the relationship, for you to remember that, like, oh, this is an element that I have to show when I'm establishing a crime, and it's going to be one of these 4, or what have you. Don't hesitate to use color. Lots of folks are going to learn better with color. Don't hesitate to use cues, the little pull-out boxes or pictures on the side that may help you to remember what you're learning about here. We got some things here. Is it a good idea to set times for your reading and outlines to max study time? Is it a good idea to set times for your readings and outlines to max study time?
I think they mean maximize. Like make the most,
like every Friday,
study time.
Every Friday is going to be outlining time.
Yeah, it's good to outline your review after class. Well, you kind of know you want to be on the section that's already done. Yeah, you want to set times throughout the semester.
Yeah, I totally would. I would say you would want to do, what I would say would be, after class, you want to crystallize your notes. So research shows that within 24 hours of listening to a lecture, you are going to forget about 90% of what you heard. So, but just a quick review afterwards will dramatically increase what you remember. It's also just cleaning it up and like putting a little highlight on, this was a good hypo. So you remember later on, that's what you're going to stick in your outline, can help. And then I would say, yeah, I mean, set aside your, Friday afternoons or whatever. And like, hey, whichever class I got finished with a section in, I'm going to do my outlining in that class, or a practice exam in that class. With the reading, I would say that's a little harder because you want to be keeping up with the reading every day or whatever. And I will say that also tends to be individual, right? I've definitely had folks who were working, and so they would be, working 9 to 5, driving 5 to 6, at school 6 to 9, and then they were reading all weekend. But then I had other folks who were not, and they would be, reading each evening. But I think setting aside time and being like, this is my outlining time is perfect, right? It's the same way that I'm like, Saturdays are my bathroom cleaning time, and that's how I make sure it gets done. Juan says, it sounds like it's about the quality of the information on the outline. Absolutely, right? And the quality that you're looking for is quality of it's quality because it is tailored to the professor. It's what she wants, right? So if I am talking about okay, so one thing is sometimes slightly different terms can be used, right? So maybe I talk about attendant circumstances. Other scholars might use concurrent circumstances. Those mean the same thing, right? But if you start talking about concurrent circumstances, I'm like, okay, you got that somewhere else. Something as simple as that, right? But sometimes people can have very different views of what's going on. And so making sure from a quality perspective that your case briefs and your outlines reflect your professor's view of the course can be really important. And then I think quality wise that it's organized in a way that works for you, right? That you can reach into your torts purse and grab, the Dora Band-Aids as soon as you need them. That's a quality question. Is it accessible to you? Is that information easily grabbable? Another way to check quality is, does it allow you to convey that information back so that it's understandable by your professor? And that's where if you can find not just a sample question, but a sample answer from your professor and see if your outline kind of roughly tracks their sample answer, that can be super helpful, right? So, and that's where like, hey, even though a lot of times we talk about punishment first in crim, on the answer, it tends to be at the end, right? It's like, he could be guilty of this, he could be guilty of this, he could be guilty of this, he could be guilty of this. And drug court might be more appropriate here because of rehabilitation rather than, retribution or whatever.
Yeah.
I meant, did you try to stick to reading or outline in minutes or hours per section? Oh, I see what you're saying, Lisa. Yeah, okay. So I am definitely a person where I have to be very, very diligent with my time and careful with my time. And so when I was in law school, I had a child, he was 3. And so I went to school full time, and then I would drop him off at 8 a.m. I would get to school at 9 a.m., had class. And then I left at 5 p.m., or I guess 4:30 p.m. to pick him up at 5. And from 5 to 8 p.m. was his time. And then I studied from, 8:30 until like 11 every night. That was my study time. So any reading that I was going to do had to fit into that time period. And then we did not have class Friday afternoons. So Friday afternoons was my outlining and practice exam time. I could also get some stuff done Saturday morning because I would take him to the local playground and I could work while he played on the playground. So yeah, there was, for me, it was setting aside chunks of time and saying, during these chunks of time, I am going to do XYZ thing. Because that sort of rule that says a task will expand to fit the time available to it. Yeah, like I could, like if I said to myself, like, oh, I'm going to study, like, yeah, I could totally spend 7 hours studying. But am I actually studying? I've got the book open, but then, I may or may not have actually accomplished what I meant to accomplish. So I had for myself, I had to be specific about goals and assign specific times. So that may be a strategy that you also find helpful.
Yeah, I didn't have a kid and I had to do the same. Like this, on these days at these hours, I will prepare for civil procedure. And on these days at these hours, I will prepare for property and, whatever. I had to, somebody sat down and helped me with my schedule. Frankly, I had not been as disciplined as an undergrad because undergrad was easier for me than law school. So she kept saying, plan your work and work your plan. So now I teach that to my bar students, but it applies to you guys as well. Plan your work and work your plan. I want to give one caution about using outlines from former students in that professor's class, because there is something good about that, right? It's that same professor. So you've got their lingo. But caveat emptor, and if you haven't covered that yet, let the buyer beware. I had a student come to me and say, he was struggling with this outline. And he said, well, my buddy, name, took your class last year and he's sharing his outline with me. And I couldn't say, your buddy got one of the lowest grades in my class, run. How could I tell this guy that, right? But like literally, this guy got one of the lowest grades in the class and was offering to share his outline with someone out of a good heart. But no, please, no. Now, if you know that someone did well, or you're on law review and they have outlines from, that they share, or, some source where the student did well, now your only hurdle is maybe they organize the purse differently than you do. Maybe it's really good for them, but it won't be good for you. It's some 180-page outline and you really will thrive on 30 pages. So personalization to the professor is important and personalization to you is important. So it's not that you can't use it, but you should adapt it to you and make sure that they are somebody who I had to find a way to say, you might want to just make your own outline. Like, I couldn't tell him the guy's grade, like run. But that was a painful moment as a law professor. So be careful. The quality will vary. And maybe the guy's outline was way better than his exam, but somehow I'm thinking he might have been missing stuff. Yeah. And then I don't know, I had one other point that came to me while you were teaching, Jen, and I have forgotten it. We did not talk about diagrams and charts. Your outline might not be all words. Sometimes you will find it helpful to group the concepts together in a diagram or a flow chart or a picture, and some of us more think that way and some don't. And if you don't, that's fine too. But if you tend to find yourself taking your notes that way or tables, set up your outline that way.
Yeah, and I think we actually are thinking we may do a whole session on diagramming and charts later on. So more creative outline formats.
Yeah, we will. But just to let you know, feel free if you're going in that direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I understand there are now like tons of programs out there that you can, remember I said I rescued kittens. And so I have one that's trying to join our session. So there are programs out there that you can use to make charts, but I honestly go to edhelper.com, which is for like elementary school teachers, and grab charts from there that you can fill out. And I love a good old compare contrast chart where it's like, okay, what's the difference between specific deterrence and general deterrence? And give the definition of each, give an example of each, talk about the pros and cons of each. Okay, it's amazing. I think Visio is one of those charting softwares, right? I am not technologically capable enough to use it, so I will defer to Celeste, who may have used it.
No, I've used a couple of things because in my BarMax office hours, I try to come up with new formats, and I've done flow charts, and I've done a Glyphy, which was a mind map, but I haven't used Visio. But if it works for you, use it. Jen, you mentioned some of our future sessions, which is a really good segue for me. We have one coming up toward the beginning of November on exam taking. So I know, wait, do we have another one in October? We don't. Okay, so go get good at your classes, use the skills we've taught you so far, synthesis, reading cases, outlining, and we will come back in November and do a workshop specifically on exam taking. We have one other BarMax instructor who you have not met yet, who is also a former law professor. That's Lavanya Sabin. So she will join me for that one. And then we have a few more that we've sketched out for second semester. But if you think that there's something that would help you, throw it into chat now or write to us, support@testmax.com, or, click the support icon in the free version of either BarMax or 1L. You have plenty of ways to reach us and share those suggestions, because we want to do what's helpful to you. So definitely, if you have a certain session that you would like us to teach, let us know, because we may incorporate that into next semester's programming. Did you want to close out, Jen, before I go?
Yeah, I was just going to say one other thing is that, sometimes folks make an outline and they're just like, I just want somebody to look at this and make sure I'm on the right track. And, book a tutoring hour. We're happy to do that. Like, just take a look at it, say, yep, looks good, and you can go on your way. But it really should be individual. I will say that for my first semester, I did this kind of a more traditional outline. By my second semester, I was using more charts, pictures, graphs, that kind of thing. And you do want to experiment like that and kind of figure out what works for you. So the idea here is to give you guys tools and for you all to try them out and see what's your jam. So we're glad you're here. We're glad you're picking up these tools. We're glad you're sorting your purses, cleaning that up. And we're looking forward to seeing you soon for the exam one. Yes.
And as I stated earlier, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So if you could stop sharing yours. So the first 3 workshops, webinars, will be available by the middle of next week on the TestMax YouTube page. So you go look for TestMax Bar Prep or TestMax 1L, either BarMax or LSAT Max. You may have seen that YouTube page already, because some of the LSAT Max videos are on there as well. We're going to probably create a whole new playlist just for 1L. They'll be up by the middle of next week. We also have tutoring available, as well as the 1L app, which you can download for free and have unlimited access for 1 week for free. See if that is something that you find helpful. I hope you'll take advantage of the resources that we're offering. We want to keep in touch. Happy studying and good luck. Thank you, Jen. Bye.